are talking about kidnapping today and insecurity, sometimes for people like me, it's like, this is not something new. The government itself has been operating a kidnapping ring for donkey years now.
How do you mean?
How many activists do you know are missing right now? Do you know that even during NSAS, there are many people went out for NSAS who never go back home? During NSAS, there are many people who went out for protest who never returned. They were not arrested, there are no dead bodies, and they are not back.
Up to this moment.
During Ember governance, it's the same thing. And the bandits or kidnappers, they are equal opportunity criminals. Women, they will kidnap. Poor, kidnap. Children, kidnap. Muslim, kidnap. Christian, kidnap. Even if you are an atheist, they will kidnap you. They are not looking at socio-economic condition. So we are in a situation of complete disaster. When you look at CLA, where this current kidnapping took place on May 15th, what do you see there? A community abandoned by government, no road, nothing. Look at the condition of the schools. Even interconnectivity in terms of telecom mast and all of that. So that even for somebody to call the state capital from a place like CLA might be a problem. So it's an architecture of underdevelopment. One of the challenges, but if you look at what happened in CLA, how long did it take Makinde to even get there? So if Makinde got there, also maybe after 12 days, how long do you think it took any police van to even appear in CLA after the kidnapping? The worst thing for me, which is where I'm going, is that putting a gun back in the hands of somebody who says he's giving up arms is the worst, is the most foolish policy ever.
Of course it is.
You are neither helping that person, neither are you helping society itself at the end of the day. But these are part of the terrible, terrible choices that the government has had to make.
Hello Lagos, hello Nigeria, hello Africa. It's good to have you here again on Unfiltered Mind, the podcast. My name is Femi Eniola Oluwafemi Adams. Today's show promises to be an outstanding one. You know why? You're about to find out soon. And to official sponsors, Brandmark Limited. Brandmark Limited deals in sales and services of video and audio equipment of all kinds. And presently, they are offering free sensor cleaning for the users of Sony Alpha cameras. So all you need to do is just to walk into any of their stores, and guess what? You'll be attended to. And to the other of our sponsor, are you a lover of mystery stories? If yes, The Dark Past is on all social media platforms. And of course, Phantom Panels. Phantom Panels is strictly on YouTube. I bet you it is mystery stories at its finest. Check them out today. And back to our guest. He's a human rights activist, a freelance journalist, and a member of DSM, Democratic Socialist Movement. He is one of the members of the Committee of End Bad Governance in Nigeria. He is a leading campaigner against police brutality, bad governance, and of course, injustice in the land. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Mr. Hassan Taiwo Soweto. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's good to have you in our studio here.
I almost clapped after you.
You should have done that. Let's delve into the matter of the day. It is serious business.
Yeah.
One of the most hottest conversations in our country today is the kidnapping in Oyo State, where we have 46 people kidnapped, children and teachers. One of them beheaded already. Simultaneously on the same day, we had one at Borno State. And we never really get to hear much about that. Sometimes in 2025, April, something happened as well in Plateau. Over 56 people were massacred. Sometimes in June as well, we had something of such in Benue. Over 100 people massacred. The list is endless. It is mind-boggling. Tell me, how would you rate the reaction of the government towards this insecurity that we're experiencing in this country?
Absolutely insensitive. Absolutely. I mean, the reaction of the president is appalling as far as I'm concerned. And it's sad because it looks as if we are replaying all over again for ourselves all of the theatrics around the Chibok girls kidnapped some few years ago in 2014. And you would have expected that with that experience and with the role that the individual is the president today played at that period, carpeting President Jonathan, former President Jonathan, for being insensitive, for being clueless, that the response this time around, would be different. But what we have seen with this government is that they don't in any way care about what happens to ordinary people. And I'll give you two examples. The first was the reaction of the government to what happened in Jos, the Palm Sunday massacre
Event, yes.
in Jos. The president never even planned to visit the victims. And then eventually, when at the last minute they decided to go, the president could not even get to the place where the attack happened. He stayed at the airport and asked that the victims of the violence should be brought down to the airport, come and meet him.
It's appalling.
What that demonstrates is that this is a president who has no time for the citizens. I don't want to begin to mention names because obviously we are not happy that if anybody loses their lives. But we've actually had, members of the elite in this country who have lost loved ones or were involved in accidents. And you could see how the entire government responds. A recent example was the unfortunate accident that happened to the to Anthony Joshua, the boxer. And you see from the presidency to the government in Lagos and Ogun State,
A statement was given.
there were statements,
Well,
there were outpour of emotion, and there were actually practical responses to assist, those who were victims of the crisis, with different state government in between Lagos and Ogun State, dispatching ambulances and all of that. So why are we not getting the same response when something has happened to ordinary people in this country? But that's just one example. The recent event in Borno and Oyo State is another clear confirmation, even if anybody had any doubt before now, that this government is as clueless as the government of a former president, Jonathan.
Are you telling me that this government is not capable? Is that what you mean?
Even before you begin to talk about capacity, if the point I'm making is even the normal moral, emotional reaction that is equivalent to those who claim to lead people when an adversity has happened. It took this government 14 days before a presidential delegation. Remember that people were in captivity in Oyo State. During that 14 days, the president came to Lagos State for Ileya. What is the distance between Bodilon and Oyo State? The president had the presence of mind to wake up on Ileya Day, to kill his ram, to go for prayers, and then to come back and settle down, eating and drinking with his friends.
Mr. Soweto, would you say Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, would you say he's not a Democrat? Because he called himself a Democrat at some point, and in fact, he still does.
See, this whole idea of somebody being a Democrat is something, is a deception manufactured to burnish the image of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Because if you ask those who were involved in the struggle in the military era, they will tell you for a fact the role members of the ruling elite like Bola Ahmed Tinubu played in that era. They were neither here nor there. They were those who will be with the people in the afternoon. But in the night, they are with Abacha.
How so?
Advising and all of that. Because at the end of the day, the civilian, the politicians, the civilian ruling elites at that period who decided to join forces through Nadeco with the struggle of the people against the military were only doing that for their own interest. It was not because they were actually interested in any serious fight for democracy.
Does that include Mr. President?
It does, because one part of his own challenge was that he had just been elected.
But he said he fought for democracy.
Into the Senate.
He has said it several times that he fought for democracy.
No, I mean, we are not disputing that he fought.
So do you agree that he fought for democracy?
But what kind of democracy did he fight for?
You tell me.
I mean, isn't the same, is it not the democracy we have seen over the past 26 years now? What is the difference between what we have experienced in Nigeria in the past 26 years and the experiences under military rule? And that is exactly the point I was trying to make, the distinction between those who put together under Nadeco and claim that they were fighting for democracy, whereas what they were simply fighting for is their own interest, because they consider the military taking power from them as an aberration, because they feel that the civilians are supposed to be the people in power. But that it was not because they in any way disagree with either the economic policies of the military or even the repressive policies of the military. And that's why, when you look at the past 26 years of democracy, all of the governments that have ruled Nigeria between that period
and now
have implemented the same economic policies as the military did, and they have also carried out an onslaught against democratic rights, even much more than the military ever attempted. It's under the leadership or administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu now that to protest on the streets is now tantamount to committing treasonable felony. It took a long period of engagement at the court and practical protests on the streets before we were able to get freed hundreds of young people arrested during the embargo government protests in 2024, including children underage, all of whom were charged for treason. So, if you compare that example alone, and you look at the treason trial, for instance, carried out under the Abacha military junta of the Ogoni 9, Kensariwa and 8 others,
yes,
and the eventual, execution, what is the difference? Because if not for the outcry, if those young men and the underage children had gone through the court process on the basis of that charge, if they were found guilty, then, according to the law, death sentence is the direct, punishment for treason. So that those are examples that shows that this person who calls himself a Democrat was never a Democrat in the first instance. Because to be a Democrat is not to claim that you are one in words.
It's not by words.
It is that in every of your, activity, whether in and out of power, that fact of being a Democrat will be amply demonstrated. And when you are in power, that is even when you have an opportunity to do so, much more than any other way. But under this government today, all of the democratic rights, the fundamental rights that Nigerians fought for, and by which Nigerians had to fight against military rule, all of them are under onslaught today. The right to freedom of expression is not available for Nigerians. Right now, we now operate under the understanding that if you exercise your right to freedom of expression, it is not likely that you are going to be alive or around after that, because the DSS are on the prowl, picking up people. But what is even worse is not the DSS. It is the fact that now you have had over the past few years, especially since the period of late President Buhari, the disappearances of activists, including journalists, who have exposed government or spoken truth to power. So that when you are talking about kidnapping today and insecurity, sometimes for people like me, it's like, what are we saying? This is not something new. The government itself has been operating a kidnapping ring for donkey years now.
How do you mean?
How many activists do you know are missing right now? Do you know that even during NSAS, there are many people went out for NSAS who never go back home?
Up to now?
Up to now.
Mr. Soweto, this is an allegation you're raising. Are you sure?
During NSAS, there are many people who went out for protest who never returned. They were not arrested. There are no dead bodies, and they are not back.
Up to this moment?
During embargo governance, it's the same thing. Of course, there are a number of prominent cases. There is the journalist, I can't remember his name now, that disappeared in Kaduna. And the issue resurfaced only just recently. So, from that point of view, it has to be clear to us that there is nothing we are seeing in Nigeria today in terms of kidnapping and co. that is not first and foremost something that has happened before as a product of government repression. But away from that, just to rest my case on this question of Bola Tinubu being a Democrat, is to say that Nigerians now, we have come to a point where we have to define what democracy truly means and what kind of democracy we actually want.
Okay, before you define that democracy, you made mention before now. You said before 1999. Okay, because democracy started 1999, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Now, up till now, you said we've not been practicing democracy. That we've been practicing what the military junta have been practicing over time. So, are you telling me that this dispensation is one of the worst so far that we've actually seen?
See, it still gels with even the point I wanted to make.
Okay.
Because the distinction I wanted to make is to say that there's a difference, philosophically and others,
Okay.
between democracy and civil rule. The mere fact that you have in power people who have been elected, so-called, and who are wearing civilian garbs, does not mean that democracy is being practiced.
Okay.
The mere fact that elections are holding from time to time, every 4 years, every 5 years in some other cases, does not mean that democracy is being practiced. And I say this because these are some of the Western labels that we have become accustomed to. Something which does not allow us to be able to understand the rudiment of our own problem. Because when you look at what has happened in this country for 26 years, what is obvious to all is that Nigeria has not practiced anything called democracy. What we have seen so far is civil rule with occasional elections. And those elections are not even free and fair. There's hardly anybody in government today who can beat their chest that they're actually going to power through people's votes. What has happened over the past 26 years simply is that people have lost the zeal to continue to challenge electoral losses in the courts, because it has become obvious that nothing will be achieved by it. Otherwise, there is ample evidence, even just going by what happened recently with the party primaries. Didn't we all see it? Either APC or PDP or NDC, even by virtue of the videos alone with the counting process. 1, 2, 3, from number 3, 15. Number 15, you jump to 55. These are no jokes. This is an indication or what they do with the real election itself. So when you look at that, it's obvious that Nigeria is worse than it has ever been.
Under this regime.
Not just under this regime, under all of the regimes that were vast since 1999. What has happened between Obasanjo and Tinubu is simply a progression of the same problem, a progression of the same absurdity. That's why when you look at any indices, you see it's bad under Obasanjo and it begins to get worse from one regime to another.
Okay, Mr.
If you look at economic indices,
okay,
you look at the indices of the security situation in terms of how many people are killed annually, how many people are kidnapped annually, it's the same thing. It's a progression of crisis, of failure.
Okay, Mr. Soweto, talking about this insecurity of the thing, tell me, what is the way out? What is the way out of this insecurity? This insecurity in the country? Because, we were saying some times ago that Lagos is secured. Some people were saying some times ago that Abuja is safe, but I'm sure you know Abuja is not safe. Lagos is not safe.
Okay.
A couple of days back, some bandits were actually arrested in Lagos on the island.
Yeah.
You know that. Now it has actually gotten to Oyo, which we started from. Yeah. What is the way out of this insecurity?
The way out is no other than good governance, first and foremost. Because every of the crisis of security you see is reducible to one thing. For far too long in this country, we have allowed a situation to exist where a minority of the population successfully corner to themselves the entire wealth of the country, leaving the majority of the population to continue to wallow in poverty and penury. That is the underpinning situation behind insecurity. It doesn't explain everything, but it is the underpinning situation. Because you have to ask yourself, why are young people in the north readily available to join Boko Haram, to join ISWAP? Why are people in the north central, in the northwest, readily available to go into the forest and become bandits? When you look at those questions, you begin to see emerge an outline of a class society where even crime, the nature of crime, is a reflection of the opportunities the different classes have. Because there is the rich people, what crime do they commit in this country? They commit what? Money laundering. What else do they commit? Corruption. Then occasionally, there can be domestic violence that leads to somebody's death. Those are the crimes.
But Mr. Soweto, sorry to cut you in there. We were told that many of these bandits, these terrorists, they are not majorly from Nigeria. And you said that these boys in the north, that if they are not being taken care of, obviously, they will join banditry. But we were told that many of these people, they are from Niger and other, surrounding countries.
Because the problem of bad governance, the problem of exploitation, is not restricted to Nigeria alone. It's also a problem that exists in all of the countries surrounding Nigeria. So what is happening is that as this crisis of the rich taking advantage of the poor, as it leads to the explosion of one society and its population takes to crime, then it means that crime also extends to the next country. So you have had influx, for instance, of jihadists, of bandits from Niger, from Mali, from Burkina Faso, the Lake Chad region, towards Nigeria. And as they have entered into Nigeria, they are also threatening Benin Republic, they are threatening Togo, they are threatening Ghana. That movement is a movement it's a movement of people who have been forced to a condition of turning their back on civilized society. That is no excuse for what they are doing. But for us to be able to find a solution to a problem, we must first find an explanation, a coherent scientific explanation for why that problem exists. So that is what is happening. But even when they get to Nigeria, if it was just only the foreigners alone, this criminality will not be this much in Nigeria.
Does that mean our borders are so
It
porous?
is because, yes, there's porosity of border, but it's also because even in the border towns, because borders in Nigeria or in Africa, it also denotes government absence.
How so?
The concept of borders denotes government, because borders are the extremities of society. Okay, compare Ikeja to Iyanoba towards Badagry. What do you see? Absence of government. The more you go from Lasu towards the Badagry, you begin to see government recede from the point of view of the road, of public infrastructure, and all of that. It's also the same thing when you look at all of the borders that exist in different parts.
So you're saying that
more in Oyo State, for instance, and I'm sorry to be cutting.
No, please.
In Oyo State,
for
for instance, Oyo State and Kwara State, these are states that shares borders with Togo and Benin Republic.
Okay.
You know, but when you look at Siele, where this current kidnapping took place on May 15th, what do you see there? A community abandoned by government, no road, nothing. Look at the condition of the schools. Because it's the question of border. It's not about putting a post there and collect a tax and you put customs there. It's not that. It is that being the extreme point of a country, the condition in those places, if they are so poor, then it means that first and foremost, the patriotism that you expect from the people in that area to be able, to report whatever that is likely going to be a security threat that they are seeing, is not there. And they are the first point of call. They see things. In fact, I remember an interview that some journalists had with the farmers in the Lake Chad region. I don't know which publications published that, maybe Premier Times or so, a few years ago.
Okay.
And it was on the basis of an allegation made by Chief of the Defense, I cannot remember his name now, who said that many of the people in the Lake Chad region, in Nigeria's border towns and co, are actually complicit in the security crisis. Because they see all of these things, they do not report it. And then journalists were able to interview some of these farmers. And one of them said, my brother, what do you want me to do? That oftentimes they just see different people. And the only common denominator of these very people is that they are all wearing military uniform. And when they come, whatever they tell them is what they follow. If they say they are Nigerian army, whatever rules they give to them, that's what they follow. If somebody also come and says they are Boko Haram and they have to be paying taxes, that is what they follow. That they don't know any other person. They don't know who the Nigerian government is. That was what came out from that interview. And what that tells you is that the absence of governance in border areas has become a major source of security threat to Nigeria. Because absence of governance affects the connection of citizens to the government. The loyalty that should be automatic between people and their country. The patriotism that should make a citizen, when they see something about to go wrong, to be able to call somebody. All of that is eroded when in border towns, people are just left to fend for themselves. And that is the nature of border towns across the country today. You don't need to go far to the north to see what is happening. Even in border towns of Lagos State, Ikorodu, or the likes of Shaga, going to Olambe and Co, what do you see? The border town between Lagos State and Ogun State, what do you see?
But Mr. Soweto, how come the government has paid less attention to our borders? over time.
It's because of the corruption and also
Is it deliberate?
the lack of interest in development.
Is it deliberate?
It's deliberate. Because as far as the ruling elite is concerned, they want to use less of Nigeria's wealth to develop society so that they can have enough to steal. That's the logic. So what they normally do, and that's why when you go to many states today, and if you go, I'll give an example. Go to Osun State, for instance. The only place where you're going to see any real development is the state capital. When you move from Osun State, if you go to Ekiti, it's only when you get to Ado that you're going to see a semblance that a government exists.
I think that is applicable to almost every state.
By the time you begin to get to the east, it's even worse. So what they do is just to do a few symbolic development, infrastructural development in a few places. And what that means, when you use that logic, what that means therefore is that the farther you are from the capital, then
the danger becomes for you.
The worse is going to get for you in terms of a government attention. In fact, even though elections are held in many of these border towns, the elected officials, they are known not to reside in their local government.
Wait, excuse me.
Whether councillors or chairmen or even the House of Assembly members.
For this one, you made, Mr. Soweto, you made mention of something just now, very, very, very important. You said it's deliberate, the fact that they give less attention to non-capital. Now, I remember and I noticed something that many a times this banditry issue, the kidnapping and what have you, most times it happens at the fringes of the states.
Exactly. I mean, but those are the weakest links. Those are the weakest places. Those are areas that are vulnerable because of absence of government. It's not just absence of government, absence of even infrastructure. These are places where even electrification is more inadequate compared to the rest of the country. Placement of healthcare and education is more inadequate than the rest of the country. Also, even interconnectivity in terms of telecom mast and all of that. So that even for somebody to call the state capital from a place like CLA might be a problem. So it's an architecture of underdevelopment.
But what is the
that has created the basis for this vulnerability?
Mr. Soweto, what is the responsibility of the customs?
The customs are just their revenue mobilization agency.
That's but they carry guns.
That's what they have turned them to do.
Okay.
To become.
But that is not their primary responsibility.
But when customs now, the only way customs now can justify their budget annually is to be able to say this is how much revenue. But that's what they have turned everything to jump. Every government gets a custom jump revenue. So when that is the motive, then the other duty, which is even the core duties, begins to suffer from attention. That's why I said the custom is a revenue generation. But it's not even, that's not also the only problem. Because the problem that, saying that the socioeconomic factors I explained is the underpinning factor. It's not the only factor. There are other variables. The other variables now also is that the same complete lack of concern that the government have for the welfare of the people, for infrastructural development, whether of the cities or of the extreme borders and co. They also have it towards the civil service. They also have it, unfortunately, towards the army and the police. So now you have a situation in this country today where despite the enormous increase in defense spending over the past few years, at least in the last 10 years, Nigeria has had some of the most massive, budgetary allocation to the defense sector. Yet that has not led to any improvement in in the pay and the conditions of the rank and file of the army and of the police. So what that means therefore is that government is spending money on buying weapons, on buying tanks, on buying drones, on buying fighter jets from the US. But the personnel who are going to handle all of this are not well paid. So there's no morale. And it also applies to customs. It applies to all of them. So what that means, therefore, is that people don't feel motivated even to do the job. You have had many soldiers come up on social media in recent times complaining about their conditions, what they eat, including the fact that when they get injured or killed, there is no guarantee as to what government will do to assist their family. And when these few people come out to talk, what happens? The military hierarchy arrests them and subject them to trial, to court martial rather. That is what has been happening. I still know a group of soldiers who were court-martialed a few years ago and were dismissed from service. So how do you then want that kind of army to fight effectively?
But at some points, Mr. Soweto, at some points, this administration replaced now retired Christopher and put Oleyede. Yet we still can't actually see any changes. And the security, the homeland security, we had actually a new president, the president of Mr. Adeyinka, Famakinwa. We still can't actually see any changes.
I don't even know what that was.
Exactly. So now my question is, I will take it back. My question is, what is the way out as an activist that you are?
Okay, so
what is the way out? What is the solution?
To answer that pointedly, because if you understand the socioeconomic basis for this crisis, and we have also been able to outline other variables that has made the situation worse, which is the fact that even when the government claims that want to fight the insurgency, the government is not funding the individuals who are supposed to do the work. I mean, the army, the police, customs, and all that. When we understand all of this, I think we can then begin to look at what the kind of solution should be.
The government are not funding them.
The first step that I think we have to take now is that the people have to take their destiny to their own hands. Because even the formula of state police, as far as I'm concerned, is badadash. Because people are making the proposal of state police as if the state police is going to be created, from mass.
Mr. Soweto, don't you welcome that?
And it's not going to be created within the same system.
Is that not a welcome development?
It can't be a welcome development.
Tell me.
I wouldn't fear Amotekun. Amotekun, is that not a form of state police? LASMA, is that not an indication of what state police? The worst possible, the scourge on people's life in Lagos State today, it's not even the black uniform policeman. It's LASMA. Somebody still called me yesterday from LASMA office where they were trying to exploit them. 200,000 naira, that's what they were billed. So, state police created within a socioeconomic capitalist system that is based on exploitation, based on corruption, is going to be like adding 0 to 0. What is that going to equal to? It's 0. I think that we have to begin to, the solutions that can work are solutions that are outside of the system. Anybody that's still looking within the system for solution is not going to be able to find anything. And that's why I think the first step is for the people to take their destiny into their own hands. And what does that mean? Because we face the challenge now that government is even ready now to give out its responsibility of providing security to private forces like Igbo and Co. That is the challenge the danger we face now. And that must not happen. Because if that happens, it's going to lead to a repeat of what OPC, Isakaba and Co. did. I mean, is this Isakaba they call them? Bakassi, right? Yeah. There was a movie that turned into Isakaba. Yes. So what OPC and Bakassi boys did during the Obasanjo period, where they turned security into a means of wind-chanting ethnic groups, religious groups, and all of that. There are many people who lost their lives in Lagos State, homes destroyed, future completely, destroyed. We must not have a repetition of that. And that is why the only way forward is first and foremost for the people in these endangered areas, endangered communities, to set up what we call community defense forces, which must be non-sectarian, multi-ethnic and multi-religious. Because in the real sense, many of these border towns are also melting points of nationalities. I'm sure that if you go to all these ACL or Yawata, or you go to all of these communities in Badagry or even Kwara State, you are going to see that it's not just Yoruba people that are there. That is the nature of border communities. They are melting point. So the kind of security apparatus that you must develop there must be a united one. That means that everybody in that community that is a legitimate member of that community should be part of that security team for the purpose of gathering intelligence from time to time, doing patrols, and also defending their community against any incursion. They can work with security operatives in terms of providing intelligence and co. But they must be the first step. Because one of the challenges, if you look at what happened in Esiele, how long did it take Makinde to even get there? So if Makinde got there, also maybe after 12 days, how long do you think it took any police van to even appear in Esiele after the kidnapping? When all of us know that in this Lagos state, even if such a thing happened, it might take police 3 hours to get there.
But the forest guard issue that Tinubu actually brought out recently, don't you think that's a welcome development too?
The forest guards,
yes.
Where are they going to manufacture them from? Because when I talk about community defense forces, I'm talking about something that arises from people in that community.
The indigenous.
There is indigenous knowledge that we have not yet harnessed for security. When they talk about forest guard deploying hunters and co, it's an attempt to try and recreate that. But we must not allow them to now turn into a force that is created in Abuja or created in Ibadan. Because what you need is for the community to rise up on its own.
To survive on its own.
To fight on its own. These are communities that have history of doing that anyway. Before colonialism came, before these former structures of government came, these communities have always had means of defending themselves. That is what we need to recreate now. And inevitably, there will be one of the first leg of people that will form a core that will be the local hunters. But these are people who travel wide. The same way all the Fulani herdsmen go about in the bush. That's also how hunters go about. Some of them can enter the forest from Oshogbo and appear in Ijebu-Ode. That is how they move. So you can imagine the enormous knowledge that exists among those people that has not yet been tapped because they know they meet people in the forest. They meet loggers in the forest. They meet miners in the forest. And obviously, they are also going to see all of these kidnappers also moving about. So if you can harness that in the community defense force that is democratically set up by the community itself, and also armed, they must be allowed to get armed. Because the problem with even the forest guard you are saying now is that the idea of the forest guards, it doesn't bring any relief. Because how many forest guards can the government create centrally that can be able to ensure that every community that is under threat, will receive protection? Whereas each community on their own can provide their own protection. 2-3 communities that are linked, that are close together, can link up that committee or that force to work together. It's like what we also do in cities like this, where different streets, secure their own security guards, and they work together, to provide protection. Those are the kind of things that we want. Because one of the reasons why the forest guard will not work is that you are still going to be placing the direction and the functionality of that kind of setup in the hands of a government that has failed without any doubt. We need a new system that is placed in the hands of the people themselves. Because ultimately, it is people that are, directly affected by this.
But the state policing, can't we bring the indigenous people into the state policing?
Well,
can that be done?
That has been done before in Borno State, and what happened to it? Because the formula I just put forward now of a community defense actually was what Village JTF was a few years ago in Borno. It was an indigenous community response for their own security, because the idea was that they know this Boko Haram now. They know people come to their markets to come and buy things. Like one of the stories I had is that the Shell thing, that one of the first inkling people had that something was going to happen was that somebody just came to buy rice, beans and bread somewhere and bought 30,000 naira. That kind of community, even if they are doing party, somebody cannot successfully buy that much merchandise at once. So that's a sign that something, and the person went back to the your national park. So that if you had a force there, a team, that's intelligence that has given them a forewarning of what was about to happen, and then for them to act on it. But in that place now, somebody saw that, but who would they report to? They don't know. So that was the idea of the civilian JTF, and it succeeded for a while. Then it became bastardized, and why? When the government now incorporated it into the Joint Task Force. Some of those JTF members themselves now became even menace to their society. So you have also had incidences involving so-called civilian JTF members against community members in some of these places. Whatever, and what it shows is that whatever a government, this kind of capitalist, exploitative, corrupt government touches, it turns to ashes. And that's why I go back to what I said before. That the only way out is to begin to look for solutions directly outside of this government and this system. And that's just one proposal. The other proposal is this. It is that security is not just a function of arms alone. A secure nation, a secure community is a community where you have a population that has the least motive to be criminal. That is the only security. That's why the Yoruba people have this adage. So when you have a majority in population who have a motive to turn to be criminal, then no matter how much kinetic instrumentalization you have on ground, police, army, armor tank, it wouldn't stop criminality from emerging and thriving because the motive has been planted. And that's why no matter how much we're able to do with this civilian JTF kind of a community defense that I've just advocated, the most important step that must be taken as a second step is how to expand development across the country and into all of these border towns that are vulnerable to insecurity now. And that is where the question of governance comes in. The question we have to ask ourselves is that the current ruling elite in this country, are they prepared for this kind of work? Because for you to be able to accelerate development across Nigeria, do you know what it would mean? It would mean that the wealth of this country that is currently concentrated in the hands of a few would have to be taken off them to be utilized into developing society, building schools, providing bridges, building roads, because it is only this architecture of socio-economic development that can begin to retool the minds of the people who are easily mobilized or recruited by all of these forces.
So how can we achieve that? How can we take this wealth from them?
And that is why a revolution has become inevitable.
A revolution?
Because now, if 10 years ago now, the only reason why you think that Nigeria is not working is because of hunger. 10 years ago, the only reason why you think Nigeria is not working is because of constant fuel price. 5 years ago, the only reason why you think Nigeria is not working is because of inflation, how it's affecting your business. Right now, what this security shows us is that our very life is at stake if this kind of society continues, if capitalism continues in Nigeria, if this kind of corrupt governance continues in Nigeria. Our very life is at stake. And the bandits or kidnappers, they are equal opportunity criminals. Women, they will kidnap. Poor, kidnap. Children, kidnap. Muslim, kidnap. Christian, kidnap. Even if you are an atheist, they will kidnap you. They are not looking at socio-economic condition. So we are in a situation of complete disaster. So that The only solution, therefore, is that if you are going to have the kind of governance that will change society in that manner, ensuring that the root of insecurity is completely wiped off, we need a revolutionary overthrow of capitalism.
Mr. Soweto, what is the worst that can happen if we refuse to tackle this insecurity? What is the worst that can happen? Because I remember...
It's an explosion.
okay.
Somalia.
Okay, I remember back in the day, there was a particular time during the Obasanjo tenure, he actually said it on the national TV that shoots these people at sight. He said that widely, and the whole world heard it. How come this administration can't do the same?
They'll be shooting them. Don't you see the videos?
No, but they do arrest. There are some arrests that they've actually made that don't defend yourself, when these people come to you. We've heard that several times. That don't defend yourself. When they come, just allow them, don't kill them. We've had incidents in the north.
What I'm saying is that, yes, you have had incidents. You have even had those ones who they said they are trying to radicalize. But I'm also saying that thing Abaso just said, they're actually doing it. Part of the reason, why do you think that the military, sometimes last year, or was it 2 years ago, had problem with Amnesty International and a number of other NGOs, and they said that they were going to prevent NGOs from operating in the Northeast? It's because they felt that the NGOs were using the issues of human rights violations, to hamper the militarizing ventures they were doing there. So they're actually killing them, especially with this bombing, this area bombing they are doing now. I mean, you have seen a lot of the bomb markets, regardless of whether innocent are there or not. So they are doing that.
Yes, they are doing that, but it's not enough because, Mr. Listen, it is really mind-boggling when you realize that bandits attacks our barracks. They attack the barracks and they go scot-free.
Let me tell you this. If that method will work of killing them, of killing all of them off, this insurgency would not have lasted for nearly 2 decades. Since 2009 to now should be 17 years.
So what is fueling it?
The pipeline for the recruitment into terrorism is alive and kicking. Every day, new recruits are coming in. Because in the north is in a social decay. So it means that every time, every young person who has no job, who has no family, is an immediate material for terrorism. So that pipeline is alive and kicking. So that even if you kill 10,000 right now, there's possibly 20,000 that is available, and they are paying them. All these loots, when they go about because everywhere, for instance, if you look at the Northeast, there's a Boko Haram economy in the Northeast, in all of the Chad region. Everywhere where they are situated, they establish a governance system and a tax system. If you're a farmer there, you pay tax to Boko Haram or ISWAP, not to the Nigerian government. So, if you are a fisherman on the Lake Chad, in the lake itself, the Lake Chad itself, for you to be able to carry on your work, you pay tax. So they are making a lot of money. So they are able to actually pay their fighters. And then the fighters also, especially those who are commanders, they carry out raids, which also means that. So it's a multi-million-dollar business and enterprise going on. And if you don't create an alternative form of employment that can attract young people, then that pipeline will be active and kicking. When Boko Haram started, yes, it was an ideological recruitment they were doing. Those who wanted to fight for Islamic Caliphate, who wanted to fight against, Western education. But very soon after 2009, their modus operandi changed to actually paying their fighters. That has been the case for years now. So in that sense, they are an employment agency. Boko Haram means employment. Boko Haram means family. So if you want to root out that kind of thing, because what they have created is an alternative reality. To root out that kind of thing is not just by killing them off alone, because as you are killing them off, and that's why when Trump and Tinubu were celebrating the supposed death of Al-Maliki,
one of the leaders yet.
Those who know about terrorist architecture, especially of the Islamic State variety were not celebrating anything because they know that they easily replace commanders, they easily replace leaders. There is actually a competition
Mr.
to
Soweto,
become the next whatever, because that means higher resources, access, and co. And then let me bust your brain. There was a time years ago that the Nigerian government successfully rescued some Boko Haram women, especially, and most of these women, they were wives of commanders. Most of them were actually women were kidnapped and then forcibly married to the commanders. Then they put them in a camp where they were feeding them chuo maybe once a day and all of that. It didn't. I'm not sure they lasted a year before some of them sneaked back into the forest. But before that happened, one foreign journalist interviewed some of them.
some of the women.
Some of the women. I still read the interview a few days ago. And the women were talking about how luxurious, how great their life was back in the camps, back in with the Boko Haram. Because they were wives of commanders. So they were not doing anything. They had slaves that was working for them, plaiting their hair. They were living the life that possibly any celebrity would live in Lagos, in that forest. It may not be the kind of life that we can recognize because of our privilege. But for them, it was enough. It was like the greatest thing. Now, Nigerian government put them in a camp, giving them tuwo shinkafa once a week or once a day. And you think that you can successfully de-radicalize them. What alternative reality are you giving them? So that pipeline of recruitment is what is the problem. And that is why with some of these jihadist forces now planting their feet in the southwest, if you are not careful, jihadism will begin to wear southern buba.
Are you sure it's not wearing already? Because
Yeah, exactly.
Lagos, I mean, they're in the southwest already right now.
What I'm saying, because there are possibly tens of thousands of people they can really recruit.
Okay, talking about recruitment.
Even in the southwest.
Yes, talking about recruitment, what is the motive behind it when governments will bring repented terrorists into the military? What is the initiative behind it? Does it really make sense?
Obviously, it doesn't. But
so who are those responsible for that?
Because the government is clueless. You know, the alternative they were supposed to have created to those people, they are not able to create it. The alternative was de-radicalization everywhere. If you go to the example of Rwanda, if you go to the example of these other countries where wars have been fought in Africa, and they introduce de-radicalization, de-radicalization is a means to an end. And part of the components is not just psychological de-radicalization. It's also giving that person a vision of a new kind of life, which means you are providing them with education they don't have, you are improving their skills if they don't have, and you are providing them a job to fend for themselves. These are issues of governance, which government is not able to do, which is why they find putting a uniform on them and paying them soldiers' wage.
But how terrible can that be?
And of course, that is a very terrible policy, because it means that you are just putting a weapon
absolutely
in the hands of somebody
criminals.
You are not even sure as completely.
And to crown it all, one of those times, one of the defense ministers actually made mention that they are prodigal sons.
Because in any case, and why it's also a foolish policy, is that these people are supposed to also be people who are, because the only reason why you are radicalizing them is because they said they want to give up arms. Is that not so? That's why you are radicalizing them. They are saying they want to give up arms. I don't want to live this life anymore.
But there's a law in the land.
And then you put
that stipulates
put a weapon back in their hands. I mean, yes, on the question of the law, of course, when it comes to radicalization, there are compromises that can be made. But how to make that compromise is also dependent on several factors, which is that this person also actually truly ready to become part of society, and all of that. So that if they have committed any crime, the court can decide on reducing their sentence, and in order to ensure that they recognize that they are not just being given a red carpet to rejoice.
But these ones don't even go to court.
So all those ones are important, which Nigeria did not. But the worst thing for me,
okay,
which is where I'm going, is that putting a gun back in the hands of somebody who says he's giving up arms is the worst, is the most foolish policy ever.
Of course it
You are
is.
neither helping that person, neither are you helping society itself at the end of the day. But these are part of the terrible, terrible choices that the government has had to make because it has lost, it doesn't have a clear vision of what it wants to do. Because what it really needs to do is that it needs to put jobs in these people's hands. Because the only reason why they can become a good part of society is when they have something doing. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Some of those Chibok girls who escaped, why do you think that human rights groups and NGOs quickly flew them abroad? Right now, some of them have finished their education. I've seen some of them talking on some international platforms. And you can see the difference between the opportunity they got just with that effort to get them out and other young people like that who still remain within that enclave and what their life is right now. So what that tells you is that opportunity is very important. If you say you are radicalizing somebody and you are not providing the means for them to be able to live a better life after that, then you have done nothing. They are simply going to relapse back to the criminality that they started with. So that everything has to go back to the fact that there's a governance vacuum. It was the governance vacuum itself that instigated the insecurity. The persistence of that governance vacuum is also hampering even the process of being able to tackle the insecurity. And that is why no matter what we say about what we should do security-wise, what we should do in terms of a law and order, if you don't go back to that question of governance, we are still going to be talking about this possibly in the next 20 years.
But the solution you actually profess now is revolution. Right? Yeah. Revolution.
It's inevitable.
Are we ready for revolution?
Nobody is ready for revolution. That's it.
Do you think Nigeria as a whole, as a nation, is ready for for revolution?
No country is ever ready for revolution. Look at this. Tunisia in 2008, was it? Or was it 2007? Why did you have a revolution breaking up there?
It was spontaneous.
It was because somebody just got fed up. So, where I'm going therefore is that
but we did something of such in NSAS.
Time doesn't come where a country just says, oh, we're going to have a revolution tomorrow. Revolution happens through a combination of different factors. People are fed up with the situation. The government itself has exposed itself. The ruling elites are divided because everybody is afraid of the future. But there's one other very important factor. And the absence of that factor in our situation is part of the problem why we are not yet where we need to be. And that is the presence of a leadership for that revolution. So when you see what is happening with NANS today, when you see what is happening with the NLC today, with the TUC today, or even what is happening even within the ranks of those of us who call ourselves human rights activists, CSOs and co, then you see why we have not yet had a revolution.
Do you think we need a leader for this revolution? Do you think we need a leader, somebody that will
We don't need a leader. We need leaders. We need leaders in thousands, imagine, and contributing towards building a movement to achieve a revolution. We don't need one single. When we have one single leader cannot do a revolution, because that itself even makes the revolution vulnerable. So, but what we have had is, it's not as if we don't even have those who can play that role. We still have several civil society organizations. We still have different mass organizations. The trade unions are stronger as they have ever been. The student movement is still there. But what is happening now is that many of these movements are led by people who are not prepared for revolution. And look at the NANS president yesterday, the new NANS president, who went to go and attack members of the Take It Back movement during the protest against insecurity in Ibadan yesterday. Obviously because he had been paid by Seyi Makinde to go and, because Seyi Makinde already made it clear that he doesn't want any protest
in the
land because of insecurity. So that is an example of the problem of leadership. those organizations still exist. They are still very powerful. In NANS today, if NANS has a militant leader today who is prepared to actually fight for the interests of students, you are going to have a repeat of what NANS was in the 1980s. Leading nationwide lecture boycott and shutting down the entire country. If the NLC today, NLC has over 10 million, if not 30 million members. If the NLC today, if Kwame Dajero decides that he wants to really fight consistently for the interest of Nigerian workers, Tinubu will not last a week as president of Nigeria. If the TUC today does likewise, and if the entire society movement is made up of people, leaders in different CSOs, who says enough is enough. Because the problem is not actually that people are not ready to fight. People are ready. Nigerians are always
So
ready
what
to
exactly
fight.
is the problem?
It is that leadership that is absent. Until we get that leadership right. And that's why when people are talking about leadership, they always focus on Nigeria's leaders. The Tinubus and co are not our problem. How many are they? Now, how many do you think they are? Even the army and the police that they claim they think will be their defense when the revolt breaks out, they will be the first line of charge against them. Because look at the army, look at the police, look at their condition. Look at their condition. You want a policeman who is collecting maybe 120,000 naira per month to defend you while people are revolting? It's not going to happen. So we must, so which means therefore that when it comes to how to save this country, the ball comes back to our courts as Nigerian people.
As citizens.
We have to sort out our leadership problem. We have to rebuild our movement. Nigerian workers, for instance, they need to ask the leaders of their trade unions serious questions. The students need to ask themselves whether they are worth to be called Nigeria's youth if they continue to allow people who are in no way representative of them and their ideas to continue to pretend to run the organization they are in.
Mr. Soweto, I just want to read
that's a challenge for
Yeah, that's right. I just want to read this figure to you because it's mind-boggling. During the Obasanjo regime, the death roll when it comes to the insecurity, 7,522. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Yaradua, 4,889. Jonathan was 7,400. Buhari was 17,319. Yeah. This administration has recorded 35,432. Mr. Soweto, how did we get here? This is just in less than 3 years, or 3 years, so to say, under this administration. Death row.
These figures are understated. Nigeria does not even know the number of live births.
Well, this is an appropriate. Yeah.
So how can they know who dies, who lives? These are understated figures. More people are dying on a daily basis. It is the person that they even see the dead body that they will count. These are approximate figures. It is worse than this. That's the point I'm trying to make.
It's appalling. It's appalling, Mr. Soweto.
It is worse. And again, that figure, which is a product of research by Ackley,
yes,
an
that's
American
right.
think tank.
Absolutely.
I've seen it. Is a confirmation of what I said earlier when I was talking about how, when you look at the Obasanjo administration up to Tinubu administration, and now what you see is a progression of failure, of governance failure. This just bears it out. And that's why it is possible today for people to look back and say, oh, it seems that things were much better, some 26 years ago. And it's not just in the area of insecurity. Look at fuel price. I've been protesting against fuel price increase since at least 2023. In 2023, I could never have imagined that we would in this country pay 800, 1,000, 1,400 for fuel. If you asked me in 2023 whether that was possible, I would have said, oh,
you argue it.
Any government that is mad enough to do that would have a revolution in its hands. So things have gotten worse. In fact, worse does not even describe it anymore. If we are permitted to say worse, that will better fit what is happening. And the trajectory of development shows that it will even get much more worse than it is if you allow this current capitalist system to continue to exist. Right now, we face a situation where the entire population of Nigeria is being pushed from the north, the far north, to the north central, from the north central to the south. Now,
Migration.
the crisis and security has entered the south. Very soon, we are going to find ourselves in between death and the Atlantic Ocean. Which one are we going to do at that point? Because there's no road that leads out of Lagos, out of Nigeria through Lagos. There's no road. It's the Atlantic Ocean.
Except by that grid that takes you to
The Togo and Benin Republic are facing the same problem.
but not as bad as what we have here.
Go and ask them. It's going to get back very soon. The whole of Togo North, Benin North, is taking over. The movement of jihadism is not just from Nigeria's northeast. It's coming from Niger. And Niger connects Nigeria, connects Benin, connects Togo. Niger, Burkina Faso, and some of these countries share borders with all these coastal countries. Even Ghana is facing it. Côte d'Ivoire, on the other hand, there is facing it. It's a complete disaster that is waiting to happen. We are getting encircled, not by ninjas imported from Mars, by product of Nigeria's, the product of African ruling elite misgovernance. Because whether you say they come from Niger, they come from whatever, these are human beings.
But Mr. Soweto, our leaders, they are aware
What
about
made
this.
them take to arms?
They are fully aware about this. They are all aware.
Because all of them have got, see, if you look at the character of Nigeria's ruling elite, as they steal the money, they just buy some few hotels here in Nigeria and then some few mansions in Lekki. But their major investment and life is abroad. So every one of them, what they need is the available helicopter or jet if Nigeria goes bust. It is only people like us who will be trapped. So that's why they don't care. They have already settled that for themselves. I mean, that's why this, when you saw this, there was a video on Facebook a few days ago of this Edo State senator, Kaya, what's his name? Former senator who moderated the NDC convention the other day.
Okay.
I've forgotten his name. He's very rich, like very wealthy, displays cars and all of that.
The Kogi.
Is it Kogi? Is it from Kogi? I think it's Kogi.
Milaye.
Sorry, it's not. I don't say
Milaye.
Kogi.
Yeah, it's Kogi. That's right.
Showing himself, so I think somewhere in the UK, examining some properties, and he was saying, "Oh, these are my investments," and people were abusing him on Facebook. Hey, why didn't you come to invest in Kogi? Blah blah blah. But that is an inkling of what is happening. If you go to UK today, they will tell you. I've told the UK twice now, and I can tell you that some of the wealthiest areas in the UK, Nigerian ruling elite are the major nationalities there. Some of the wealthiest areas. So when it comes to the real estate sector in Europe, in Dubai, in the US, that's where African ruling elite are pouring money into. So there's nothing they have here that they cannot afford to lose. There's nothing. That's the reality.
So they have a plan B.
They have a plan B. So when it comes to those of us who will remain in Nigeria, it is us, it is not them. And that goes back again to what I said earlier. Taking our destinies into our own hands. From the point of view of, one, protecting ourselves from the insecurity that is coming, then secondly also fighting for a new kind of governance that can actually ensure that the root of insecurity is completely wiped off. And what shape would that take? I think that's very important. Because sometimes when we talk about revolution, some people think that, oh, this is just a fine word. What they don't know what it means. What it means is not about, it's about first and foremost, taking control of Nigeria's wealth. Because we must be clear to ourselves. Nigeria does not have a wealth problem. Nigeria also does not have a population problem. Those are lies that the Bretton Woods institutions, they teach us. They say, oh, we have a population problem. Nigeria's birth rate is 4.8%. That's why, our resources is not able to go around.
So what is our problem?
Our problem is capitalism. Capitalism is a system that means that 80% of Nigeria's wealth is stored in the hands of a few who are not even up to 1% of society. So when you have 200 million people fighting for just 20% of resources, that's where you produce all this kind of inequality that exists. So a revolution means we are taking this wealth and we are utilizing it to begin to address all of the concerns of humanity in Nigeria. In the area of public education, in the area of housing, in the area of industrialization and creation of jobs, in the area of security, healthcare, and all of that. And the only way you can do that is by putting in place, in charge of society, what I would call a workers and poor people's government. And why do I call it a workers and poor people's government? There is only one class, apart from the rich, the class of the capitalists, there's only one class, only one other class. That's the working class and the poor. What the people they call middle class, they are intermediate layer. They are not a class on their own. They are either going to find themselves in the ranks of the working class, or if they are lucky, they go over to the ranks of the ruling elite. The majority class society is the working class, the poor, and what. The only way out for us is for that majority to form a government, a majority government. It's like what you had in South Africa in 1994. For the racist apartheid, architecture to crumble, a black majority government had to come to power. Because the South African blacks, they are 82% of the population. The white Afrikaners are just 7%. And that again goes back to what I was saying about democracy the other time. Because actually, what you have in Nigeria today is not democracy. It's a government of the minority, for the minority, and by the minority. The only way we can have a full expression and establishment of democratic governance in Nigeria is when the majority in society, Nigerian society today, which is the workers and the poor people, rise up to the occasion of forming a government in their own name. That government will not need protest or carrying of placards before it is aware that there's a need to fund public education or public health care. Right now, what you have at government is totally disconnected from the people. Because exactly how can you have billionaires serving as our representatives? And then you expect that government will be receptive to grievances around fuel price. And I'm going to go a bit further to give you an example. 2012, it was the former CBN governor, who is now is a monarch in Kano. What is his name? Sanusi. Who, at the peak of the subsidy removal debate, who said he couldn't remember the last time he drove into a petrol station to buy fuel. And he's speaking for all of them.
For the elites.
Ask Seyi Tinubu, when last did he enter a petrol station? Ask the outgoing Lagos State Speaker, when last did he enter a petrol station?
Obasa.
So these are people who are not living the same kind of life with us. They don't go to our markets. Hey, rice is too expensive. They don't understand it. In any case, all of the feeding, clothing, and drinking of the first family is the wealth of Nigeria that is going to it. They don't buy their own supply by themselves. So these are people who are completely removed from our reality. We need a new way of doing things.
Thank you so much, Mr. Soweto.
The working class.
We will not be able to exhaust this discussion. It's so huge. It's so deep. It's so deep. But let me give you the grace. What is your final word?
Well, my final word is to call on Nigerians to rise up. This country is not going to get better with periodic elections. So this whole clamor for, oh, let's go and collect our PVC and co. I have no problem with people collecting their PVC. I have my own. But we must be clear that for us to be able to take our country back, it requires a revolutionary uprising. And the aim of that revolution is to replace the current unjust governance, capitalist governance that we have, with a socialist government, a government of workers with a socialist program. Only that kind of government can give us the Nigeria that can work for all of us. For us to achieve that, we have to be prepared for the work of organizing, the work of rebuilding our movement, the student movement, the labor movement, the community movement, and of course, the work of resisting oppression on the street.
Thank you so much, Mr. Soweto. Thank you. It was nice having you around in our studio. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I hope you will be around again by the time we call upon you, because like I said, we've not exhausted this.
Anytime.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, you heard it all, viewers. And this is where we'll be drawing the curtain for today. But we cannot go without mentioning the Uptown Jollof. The Uptown Jollof, the kitchen that makes good home cooked meal. Yes, the way you want it. And guess what? They are available for your bookings, weddings, birthdays, burial, and all sorts of. Please, just check our screen there for more details of our sponsors. Before I go, let me leave you with this word. Remember, evil prevail in the land because good people are quiet about it. Speak up today. Lend your voice. Speak the hues of the society so that we can have a better nation and a better society. Till I see you again, it's bye for now.